Hey guys! So for this week, my chapter was chapter 3, Emotions, Attitudes, and Stress. And I noticed that upon reading the chapter, there was actually a lot of vocab terms. Like the chapter itself was kind of heavy with vocabulary and kind of understanding the different types of effects that emotions, attitudes, and stress can have on the workplace. In my presentation, I included several different key words and terms, and I'll quickly define them just so you have that kind of review for the test that's coming up soon. I think there's a lot that you can kind of take away from the chapter, and I think that it kind of helps shine a light on how important emotions really are for the workplace environment and for just your overall knowledge. So as you can see in front of you, I've kind of included a box full of keywords that I felt were the most important concepts from throughout the chapter. I chose emotions and the types of emotional labor, contagion, regulation, intelligence, because all of them really connect together and jump off of one another to kind of explain how emotions affect the workplace. And I chose attitude because attitude itself relates strongly to job satisfaction, organizational commitment, employee engagement, and organizational citizenship behavior, which all affect how efficient and how smooth an organization can run. And then I included things like stress, stressors, distress, eustress, and coping because they're all just as significant as emotions and attitudes and how they affect the workplace. And I'm going to show you later on throughout the presentation how each one connects to one another and why they're all important concepts that were included in the chapter. So the first thing I kind of want to focus on is emotions. And I'm focusing on emotions because I feel that the author kind of more heavily emphasized emotions than any other concept within the chapter. Emotions have a very strong ability to affect how the workplace functions and how a person feels about their job. Emotions can affect our workplace in various ways. One way could just be an emotional outburst. An emotional outburst could kind of damage your reputation or your work performance. You might think of it as an example of getting really angry and slamming your hands on the desk. That outward expression of anger could be seen as aggressive or temperamental, and people might be less likely to work with you. Or you could be burst into tears and you might not be able to do your work properly because you're not able to focus. Now, there's also things called emotional contagion, where your negative or positive emotions could actually spread to others and affect your emotion, their emotion, the overall mood, and their work efficiency. If you're in a really great mood or if you're feeling really happy, and that positive emotion you're having could spread to others and they could feel happier, might raise the morale. But if it's a negative emotion, say you're feeling very angry or feeling very sad or disheartened, that emotion, if you are expressing it broadly, could spread to your other coworkers and they might pick up on that and they might feel less enthusiastic about their work and they might feel like that they don't really want to do the work or they don't really want to be in that environment. And then it's also important to consider these emotions because as you can see by the emotional contagion, your emotions can reach a lot of people. So you need to be aware of that. And you need to be aware of how to regulate that or how to kind of manage those emotions. And that's kind of where emotional labor comes in. Now, emotional labor is kind of the process of managing your feelings. So we kind of present more positive emotions, even if that's not what we're really feeling at the time. Now, that kind of goes into these display rules that the organization creates. And those are kind of like these basic norms that kind of govern which emotions should be displayed in the organization and which ones should kind of be repressed or hidden. And most of the time, organizations would like you to have a more positive outlook, a more positive view. And so you have to use emotional labor to kind of manage what you're truly expressing on the outside, even if it's not the same as what you're feeling on the inside. There's also things like emotional regulation that come from this, which is the kind of like the set of processes through which people kind of influence their own emotions and the ways they kind of experience and express them. Now, there's different types. There's antecedent and there's response-focused strategy. Those are both types of emotional regulation. Antecedent kind of come into play before the emotional response it has been fully triggered, while response-focused strategies kind of occur after the emotional response has already been fully triggered. An example of an antecedent would kind of be a situation selection, like say you know one of your coworkers, you don't get along with them. So you might, instead of walking past their desk and causing a negative emotion between the two of you, you might just avoid their desk and avoid the confrontation overall. Doing so would kind of show that you're self-aware of the emotions you're feeling, that you're self-aware of the emotions your coworker's feeling, and you're kind of self-aware of how your emotions could affect the workplace. You want to avoid that situation. And being self-aware like that kind of reflects on emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is understanding your emotions and how you feel, as well as understanding the emotions of others. So it's being self-aware, it's being able to manage your emotions, and it's being socially aware. These are all key to understanding emotions in general and understanding how your emotions can affect the organization as a whole. Your emotions are truly key into building connections with others and to making the workplace and environment run smoothly and efficiently. If you're able to understand how others are feeling, you're able to communicate with them better, and you're able to make decisions based on how you believe they might behave, because you're able to predict that through how they act to certain things, how they feel, how their emotions are usually triggered. And these are all important concepts when considering why emotions are important in understanding organization. Now, emotions are not the only important concepts to consider for this chapter. While they're very important in the sense that you need to understand your own emotions and the emotions of others in order to have a smooth and efficient workplace environment, they're not the only key factors we should keep in mind. We also have to consider attitudes. And attitudes are learned tendencies to consistently respond positively or negatively to people or events. And they kind of help to discern our likes, our dislikes, and how we judge others. Now, attitudes are kind of created through 3 different steps. Those steps are cognitive appraisal, affective evaluation, and behavioral intention. Now, cognitive appraisal kind of reflects that sum total of a person's underlying beliefs, opinions, information, and knowledge about a specific event, person, or object. Now, this cognitive appraisal leads into the affective evaluation, which kind of reflects a person's attitudes and his or her positive or negative feelings towards that specific object, person, or event. So with those 2 steps, you've combined your beliefs and your opinions and the information and knowledge you have about a person towards the feelings you kind of generate about that person. And from these 2 steps comes the behavioral intention. And that behavioral intention is the intention to behave in a particular way towards a specific object, event, or person. So overall, your underlying beliefs and opinions help to form a feeling you have about a person, and that feeling helps you to generalize how you want to act towards somebody else, how you want to behave towards them. And that's very important for the workforce because your attitude could really affect the overall cohesion of that workplace. If you, over time, develop a negative attitude towards a coworker, you might be less likely to take into consideration their ideas, their beliefs, and their attitudes. You might also be less likely to want to work with them just because of these notions that you have that you've formed over time. Your attitude can also affect your job satisfaction, your passion for the job, and your loyalty towards the organization. Your loyalty towards the organization is kind of one of the most important things because if you're not very loyal to the organization, you might not really want to put the work in. You might not really feel that you could do your best for this organization. Your job satisfaction is kind of reflected in how you feel about the job, with your emotions you get from the job. And your overall passion for the job is very important because that shows you how hard you want to work and how much work ethic you have. And the more passionate a worker is about their job, the more likely their work is going to be done well and efficiently. And that really kind of connects to the workplace efficiency and the workplace overall atmosphere. So having a positive attitude towards your workplace could really affect how well the workplace comes together. Now we come to the final part of the presentation, which is stress. And I think as grad students, we're all very familiar with stress, like both positive and negative types of stress. There's eustress, which is kind of where it's a moderate level of stress that can come across as more constructive and maybe even positive. It could have positive effects on how you are. It might be something like a deadline. Like maybe this deadline, while it is stressful, it's kind of encouraging you and motivating you to get your work done on time. But then there's the other type of stress, which is de-stress. Now, de-stress can be very damaging to our mental and physical well-being. It's very destructive, and it can damage how you're feeling emotionally and how you're feeling physically. It could hit you physiologically, which means maybe an example could be insomnia. You might not be able to sleep at night because you're so stressed. You're kept up all night, and that can negatively affect your work the next day. There's also psychological, where it could kind of harm your mental well-being. You might become anxious and depressed and sad, and you're just unable to focus and get your work done. You might feel very discouraged. And it could also result in job burnout. And job burnout is when you kind of become emotionally exhausted and you're no longer really able to do your job. You're no really longer able to be motivated to do your job. It's kind of like the very extreme part of stress, but it's very common in the workplace, and it's one of the most influential types of stress because it really can affect not only you but everyone around you. Because if you're burnt out from your job, you might not want to go the extra mile anymore. You might not want to do the work, and that work has to go somewhere else, and it might go onto somebody else's desk. Now, as we all know, there's a lot of different ways you can cope with stress, and coping is kind of decreasing or eliminating the type of stress that you feel. And there's different types of coping mechanisms. There's problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. Now, problem-focused coping is decreasing your stress by stepping back and really looking at the problem and understanding the problem and creating a solution from that understanding. Now, emotion-focused coping is more kind of generating a more positive outlook on your stress. It's more using positive language to kind of decrease that stress you're feeling or decrease the stress that others are feeling. Stress is very common, and a lot of people feel it, and organizations are starting to recognize that. And you can see that through the wellness programs they've generated and created. And these wellness programs try and better the wellness people are feeling when they work for these organizations. They want to help improve your health, the type of food you're eating, the type of exercise you're getting. They want to encourage that treating yourself in a healthier manner can actually help decrease stress and help increase a person's likelihood to be efficient in the workplace. Stress is very detrimental if it's not being used in a positive sense. If it's not motivating you, it can really cripple your efficiency and your work ability. Thankfully, there's a lot of different types of coping mechanisms, and there's also things you can do on your own that you don't need to do within the organization. So overall, your emotions, attitudes, and stress are all very important factors when considering the overall efficiency of a workplace or organization. Your emotions and attitudes can affect your stress, and your stress can affect both your attitudes and emotions. You need to be self-aware and socially aware of the emotions of yourself and the emotions of others. You need to be able to repress your emotions at certain times, and you need to be able to regulate what you're feeling. And you need to be able to differentiate what you feel and when it's appropriate to behave in that manner. It's also important to recognize the attitudes you have towards others, especially if you're not consciously aware of that tendency you have to act a certain way and to have certain negative or positive emotions concerning another person that you're working with. It's also very important to consider how stress affects you and how that stress can affect your work, and how when you are working and your stress kind of decreases your efficiency, that decrease in efficiency can affect everyone around you, and it's not just you. Emotions, attitude, and stress all kind of work together, and if you're not able to regulate any of the three, you kind of are at a disadvantage. So overall, this chapter kind of highlights the importance of all three of these factors and why it's important to learn how to regulate, how to manage, and how to become self-aware of each of the three, because without them, you have a disadvantage when it comes to working in certain organizations. All right, thanks guys.